Today's guest is Michael Bridger, who qualified in London and has been practicing homeopathy for over 35 years. He was a clinician at the London College of Homeopathy Teaching Clinic for 15 years before founding the Contemporary College of Homeopathy in 1996. As a lecturer, he has taught at nearly all the colleges in the UK, as well as internationally in Ireland, USA, Iceland, Finland, Serbia, and Turkey. He has extensive experience working in medical centres alongside GPs and health workers, which has led to his highly informed and integrative approach to practice. Mike runs the Orion Advanced Practitioner Training course in homeopathy and practices at Ainsworth Pharmacy in London as well as his home in Devon. He is an avid writer with work published in many journals and has spoken at conferences across the world. So sometimes there can be some unexpected turns when you interview a guest, and these are actually my favorite episodes because of the pure spontaneity. So Mike and I had completely not planned to delve into the topics that we did today, but I'm really glad that we had this conversation about the direction that homeopathy is heading into. And because of this, I am now arranging a panel discussion with Mike and a handful of other homeopaths. We will attempt to create some clearer guidelines of what homeopathy is and what it is not. It's so wonderful that homeopaths around the world are really pushing the boundaries when it comes to the various ways in which homeopathy is practiced. But this can also cause a lot of confusion for the consumer or the patient or the client who is trying to find a homeopath to work with. By attempting to set out some clearer guidelines during our upcoming panel discussion, we hope to clear up any confusion for potential clients as well as for homeopaths. We hope to have this discussion in a couple of months' time, as it's quite tricky to find a suitable day and time when you're dealing with busy homeopaths across multiple time zones, but do keep your ears out on the podcast. So we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangout. Today, we get to hang out with Michael Bridger from the Contemporary College of Homeopathy. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's lovely to have you on. We've had a few of your buddies on as well. It's great to have you here too. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you first discover homeopathy?
One or two of those buddies owe me money, actually. I wonder if I could make a claim. Marcus Fernandez, Dion to Brett, all owe me money. I know they do. Sorry, Eugenie, what was your question? That was my opportunity.
How did you first discover homeopathy? Or how did it discover you?
I was living in Dartington, which is a sort of arty-farty place in Devon. And it was very arty. I did theatre and writing, playwriting, actually. And I didn't really like it. It was a bit pretentious. The whole place was a bit pretentious. But I did used to like, so there were lots of health food shops and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And my girlfriend at the time, the only thing I did was organic bread. And I wouldn't go into the health shop because it would have been awful to do that. Just went against the grain. So she used to go in there and get these loaves of bread. And she just came out and said, oh, there's an advert on the display board saying there's a course in homeopathy near here. And I said, what's that? And she said, well, it's like treating people with plants and poisons. And I thought, wow, I don't know why, it just clicks. And I thought, wow, how interesting. I don't know why I thought, but anyway, I checked it out and then went to London for an interview where the college used to be. And got a book, which is amazing. I got the Kent's Philosophy on Principles on, and just read it on this coach going up to Scotland overnight. The coach broke down, and I just like people say, I felt at home. I just thought this makes such sense. And from there, I started to study. It was interesting. My first introduction to homeopathy, I remember, was at Dartington, this art college, and this sort of fairly strange woman just saying she'd been to see a homeopath. I didn't know what it was. And I said, what's that? And she said, they just give me something. I said, what do they give you? She said, a pill. And I thought this was, I remember the height of insanity that someone would pay to go to someone for one pill. And I just remember being utterly outraged. And here I am, 40 odd, 50 years later, giving one pill sometimes, maybe more. But yeah, so that was my sort of introduction, really. And it took off from there.
Amazing. And have you ever combined filmmaking and homeopathy?
Filmmaking?
Yeah. Did you say playwright?
Yeah, playwriting. I've tried not to, because I think part of the reason why I just thought homeopathy was amazing for me at the time was I just was 23 writing plays. I didn't know what made people tick, really.
Yeah.
Or I thought I didn't. And I thought, crikey, I don't know people. I'm stuck in this little bedsit somewhere in Wales writing about people, and I don't see them. So I thought this is just such a brilliant opportunity to get to know what makes people tick. So in that sense, there is quite a lot of tie-overs between writing, anyway, and homeopathy. It's about story. It's about story, and I'm fascinated by story, whether I'm writing them or listening to them, about patient stories. So yeah, that's really a large part of it. But I wouldn't say I've written a couple of plays homeopathic based on sort of some loose sense of homeopathy. So yeah.
And tell us a bit about the Contemporary College of Homeopathy. So you started that in 1996. So you've got like a 30th anniversary coming up soon.
Eugenie, you've done your research. I'll say that for you. Wow. When did it start? 1996?
Your website says that, so I hope so.
Oh, I wouldn't lie on that. What was your question? Sorry.
No, you started the college in 1996. So what made you decide to start a college? Like, what was the drive behind that?
Oh, we're getting into the dirt now, aren't we? There was lots of reasons where I was teaching at different places, different colleges, and I found there was a discrepancy really between the integrity of what we're teaching and what was actually happening in the places I was teaching in to quite to an extreme extent. And that was upsetting. It was personally upsetting because I recommended students to places and they would be upset about some of the things that were happening. And I didn't think that was in line with what homeopathic thinking is all about. Because I think homeopathy is essentially about the truth, about integrity, empowerment, all those things. And to see that clearly not happening, it just made me think there's only one thing I can do. I can moan about it or get going and start one. And actually, some students asked me to start a college, and I thought, I really didn't want to. I didn't want to do that. It's like paperwork, timetabling, society. I didn't want to do it. But anyway, I ended up doing it. And I'm glad I did. And I just wanted to run a college, which is, I'm not saying make it sound like a sort of religious sect or something, but I did want to have a college which was open, clear, fun, good homeopathy, the kind of homeopathy that I understood it, what it was. And I wanted to run a college like that. So I did. And 40 years later, is it 40 years later? No, not as much as that. 30 years, isn't it? Yeah, 30 years later, we're still...
My math is pretty shoddy, but yeah, I think it's about
I joined
30.
the club. So I'm just doing this. Yeah, so we started off in a little place. It's like Billy Smart's circus. We travelled around a fair bit from various locations and so on. But yeah, still ticking away, hanging on by our fingers like most of us. But yeah, it's been good to do. It's been great to do, actually. It's all the same as patients. It's empowering people who start off, they turn up, they haven't got confidence or whatever the problems are. They're not academic. Oh, they don't know anything about medical stuff and all that. And then gradually forming this group in a way into this bunch of people that you just feel confident, but not too confident, professional, whatever that means, and able to go out and do the work. And they do. It's great. I know every college says they do that, but actually they don't. They just delude themselves into thinking that students go out and practice with what they've given them. Actually, that's not always the case, because they don't always get. Students end up very confused. But I remember going down, I was so pleased, because I think when you run a college, you can delude yourself. Like, I think, oh, this is the best college in the world, etc. And all the students go and practice without really looking at it. But I was really pleased because down here there's a West Cornwall, which is a fairly remote area of Britain, and I was invited to go and do a seminar for some people. And it was like in a cottage right in the middle of nowhere. And I went to this cottage, and there were all these students there, ex-students of ours, who were all thriving and practicing. And I thought, wow, that's what we do actually do, what I say we do. We actually do produce practitioners who have the knowledge and have the ability and the confidence and everything I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm waffling. How are you?
Beautiful. I'm good. I was just wondering, is your course mostly online or in person or a combination of both? I guess these days everyone's a little bit online or totally online.
Yeah, exactly. The whole COVID thing. I mean, I hate Zoom. I hate doing all this stuff because I like hands-on. I like classrooms. I like people sat there. You've got to see patients online now. You've got to do... So we do 50-50. So we've got this weekend coming up. We're there in person in Bristol.
Oh,
And then the
lovely.
next one after that is on Zoom. But that's okay. But
Mm.
ideally, my ideal is just to have people back in lecture rooms again and have
Mm.
patients actually in clinic rooms. Because I think we do.
Definitely my preference as well. When I get to have some clients in person, it just makes such a big difference. It's just so nice.
Totally.
Mm.
Totally. You're reading different stuff. You're reading body language in a totally different way. You're not looking at a screen with, don't get me going on it. I'm a bit of a Luddite on this stuff, but I think we live in a mad world of apparent information, apparently accessibility, apparent this, apparent. And do you know what? I think people are more isolated.
Mm.
And I think it's a bit scary, really, when you're talking to robots. If you want to pay your gas bill. This is not good, not healthy.
No, it's not. I was actually just today, I went to a shop. They're just phasing out so many of the checkouts here, and it's just all self-checkouts. And I'm not thinking, I missed that just casual chit-chat with a checkout operator. Now I just got to do my own groceries. Apparently, there's these villages now where, or places that have dedicated people that do your groceries for the oldies who want to go in and have a little chat. So it's good to see that there are some businesses that are taking care of that as well.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I am really intrigued because I read on your website that you do this thing called case mapping, and it sounds, everyone has got their kind of thing, but it sounds like your thing is about simplifying homeopathy, which whenever I hear that, I'm always just so happy because I am in a constant state of overwhelm, especially with doing the podcast and interviewing 200 homeopaths. And it just gets so complicated after a while, and everybody has a different way of doing things, and it's easy to lose the plot. So what is case mapping?
It's two different questions, really. There's the simplification bit, which we could talk about, and the case mapping, which fits into that to some extent. But I think we've just, I don't know what you think, but we've just gone mad. I mean, you listen to the stuff going on now. I look at journals of homeopathy, and I'm not the only one. I admit I'm a bit of a fuddy-duddy on this stuff, but I know really experienced homeopaths who've been in the business for a long time. And when I ask them and say, do you read the journal? Do you read it? They go, I don't know. It doesn't relate to anything they're actually doing in practice. And I'm talking about busy practitioners. So what's happened is, I think, I'm going on a rant now, Eugenie.
I love rants. Go for it.
It's just like we've gone mad. There's another system, another way of doing it. Someone else has found another brilliant way into doing homeopathy. And it's all, 90% of it is nonsense. 90% of it's ego, of somebody trying to make a mark. And now I just told you, my background is writing, creativity, art, and so on. And so a large part of that is about originality. You can't just write the same play that Bernard Shaw wrote. You have to be original. But with homeopathy, I've never tried to be original because it's not possible. You're lying. If you think, probably, you're lying. If you think you've come up with, or kidding yourself, you think you've come up with something new, it's probably not true. And you say this, and I'm not sure how many friends I have in the profession, actually, but look at the grand masters. You can't say masters and mistresses, I don't think. I don't know what you say for the female. You look at, and they write books, brilliant books like Fatak and People, and just say at the beginning, this is a small contribution to the profession, a small contribution. It's not great. Here's a huge book about dreams or whatever. And it's based on experience, really years and years of experience. And there's a humility there with the old masters and Blackie. There's a humility. We weren't pretending to be anything. Now we've got into a place of complete madness. It's like the homeopathic equivalent of the art, putting a pile of bricks on the floor and saying it's a work of art. It's like we're in the same situation. We don't dare question it because you'll be done for being right-brained, logical, non-intuitive, non-spiritual. And actually, we're just talking common sense. And to me, homeopathy is fundamentally about common sense. It's common sense. It's almost communistic. We're all equal. It relies on the patient. You're in an equal partnership with the patient. They know more than you. You don't know more than them. We're losing that. We're getting into a sort of weird thing of people coming up with stuff which nobody understands, but are too scared to say they don't understand. And this stuff is getting taught to students And it's very seductive, very attractive. It's much more attractive and seductive than learning keynotes and food cravings of remedies and stuff. But what's happened is we've lost our way. And for me, when we go on about the attacks on homeopathy and how the pharmaceutical industry are lobbying to get rid of us and all this stuff, it's interesting because you just think, hang on, where's our responsibility in this? Where's the susceptibility? We're responsible for what's happening, partly. We're responsible for the poo-pooing of homeopathy, and we're responsible for the hospitals are virtually closed down now in the UK. We have some hospitals in London. It's like the integrative, they've had to change the name. It's Boots have stopped selling homeopathic remedies. I think we have to take responsibility for that and look at what are we doing that allows us to be open to this degree of criticism. And I think it's largely down to some of what we say is utter nonsense. Some of the articles I've read and some of the stuff I hear and see is just nonsense. And everybody's too scared to say it's nonsense. What I'm telling you is, I have my own agenda and my own way of working, but I've talked to people who've been in homeopathy a long time, spiritual teachers in homeopathy, all that, and they would agree. I know they would agree because they agree with me, unless they're just scared of arguing with me. So we've gone down this road of complicating stuff. And you can see it in the education system, like systems and methodologies and stuff. It's like, oh my God, hang on, there is only one method. It's homeopathy, and there are 2 or 3 principles you need to try and adhere to. It's not difficult. But then you turn it into a 4-year course and all the rest of it. And then you get teachers coming and doing all sorts of wacky stuff that students pick up on. They don't know whether it applies in practice because they're not in practice. But we should know better, and it's our responsibility as lecturers and educationalists or whatever to be sensible and accessible, because if we're not doing that for our students and our teaching and our workshops and stuff, then what's going to happen to the patients? Because patients, it needs to be understandable to patients, needs to be comprehensible to patients. And I think more and more it just isn't. Oh, Lord, I've exhausted myself. If that makes sense.
This is why I love this podcast and why I think I sit here. I counted the other day because I've got some episodes in the podcast. We're heading into the 290 or 280 odd episodes. And some of the episodes were with mothers, so not qualified homeopaths, and some of them were just testimonials. So I counted the other day out of those how many homeopaths have been on the podcast. And it's been about 200. And everyone has a different idea about the right way of doing things. And I love that. I was trained very classically and then played around with various different things. And now since doing the podcast, I'm just open to everything, and everyone's doing things so differently. I hear what you're saying. It's easy to get carried away with all the bright, shiny things out there. And I'm constantly finding myself off on tangents. But that's why I think when you are training to become a homeopath, that it's so important to have a solid classical grounding, because otherwise you will lose yourself in all the shiny stuff out there. And I do worry when I see homeopathic schools that start off with the shiny stuff. I actually have an interesting story because my qualification that I started out, they only taught the sensation method. But luckily, I became pregnant in my second year, so I couldn't, the next year I would have had to be full-time to be able to finish what was then a degree course. And I couldn't because I had a newborn. So I was then forced to go to a different homeopathic college, which had a 4-year diploma program, but they taught classical homeopathy. And I do not think I would be practicing now if I had finished at the first school, which only taught the sensation method. I'm so glad that I had to change to a different college halfway through and get that really good, solid classical grounding. Otherwise, I would have lost myself in all the shiny stuff out there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there's so much misrepresentation of what I'm classical, actually. But that's a term that's been so mistreated and misused. It's just completely lost.
Even the term homeopathy, though, if you ask anybody what's classical homeopathy, you will get different interpretations wherever you go. But if you even ask people what is homeopathy, there are so many different definitions for homeopathy. Is it actually the way, because I saw in a group just yesterday, somebody said, is mother tinctures homeopathic? And somebody replied, it's how you prescribe it that makes it homeopathic or not. So there's these constant debates. Is it the remedies that are homeopathic? Is it the process? Is it the consultation? Is it like, what is homeopathy? What makes something homeopathic? What makes a treatment homeopathic? Maybe that's a question I can ask you. What are your thoughts?
If it's based on the basic principles of homeopathy, like cures like, really. And there are a few other principles you might add to that, law of cure and so on. Generally, the one remedy thing, but I wouldn't be too strict about that either. I think sometimes it's fine to use different stuff. So I don't think it's not like a religious sect or anything like that. It's 2 or 3 principles, like cures like. It's not difficult. And I think the problem is that we accept that it's so lovely, isn't it? So wonderful, so many different approaches and so many this and that. So lovely. We mustn't argue really, because everybody's got their own way and how wonderful. No, it's not. It's either called homeopathy or it's called acupuncture or it's called herb. If we lose our boundaries and our terminology, we lose our core, which is, I think, what you're saying with the classical. But actually, classical is really actually pretty open-ended. If you look at Hahnemann and Kent, there's like this idea of classical being Kent, and then they do these methodologies where Kent is constitutive prescribing, essentially prescribing on mentals first, which is an ideal. That's confused. But actually, he didn't do that. Neither did Hahnemann. Generally used mentals to confirm. So even that is weird. We end up with a sort of homeopathy, which is psychotherapy. If we're not careful, we end up with it. And actually, what Kent said wasn't any of this stuff. So classical doesn't mean what it was sold as in London at the classical colleges and stuff. Actually, it wasn't true. When you look at what Kent actually says, it's a very broad church. But we end up with different approaches, and then there's a practical approach, and then there's, as you say, the sensation approach. What we need is a damn good debate about it, get everybody together and argue.
Oh, I am so up for that. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Eugenie. You've got the absolute forum to do this, but actually it needs people to argue and discuss, because that's how, and be critical in a respectful way. Otherwise, we don't move forward. We just have these little sects. There are sensation method people, they wouldn't talk to me probably because of what I've said. It's like it's mad. And it's reflective of the society we live in now. You can't actually discuss COVID or Brexit with people because everybody's got increasingly entrenched in a view. 30, 40 years ago, I used to argue. You'd go to the pub and you'd have arguments around the table with people. You didn't fight about it, but you had really good discussions. And that's how you move forward. We used to have this great discussion right across the board. The political climate, health climate, people have their views and they stick with it, and that's it. And you're either in or you're out. So we need to talk about it. Get a Sankaran on, get the talkers on. Let's shout it out.
I am actually the type of person that will do that. So you will receive another email from me with an invitation, because this is something that I have thought for a while that we need to do, because I feel like there's so many different branches of homeopathy, and also for our clients to know what it is that they know when they go to a practitioner, what it is that they can expect. Because if you are somebody that feels deeply uncomfortable with being prayed with, like this is one of the things that I heard recently. Somebody went to a homeopath and the homeopath couldn't figure out the remedy. So she said she wanted to pray with a woman to decide the remedy. Now that, that some people will love that, but for other people, they will really feel deeply uncomfortable. So we need to, and some people are really uncomfortable if you try to use intuition or pendulums or things like that. So we need to have definitions of what type of homeopathy you are practicing. And I really feel it's time that we kind of branch off and own it and say, okay, I am an intuitive homeopath. I am a classical one remedy, just so that our clients know. And so that homeopathy doesn't get this brush stroke of, it's when you have an elephant and you have a bunch of blind people. What's that joke? And you ask the person on the trunk, what does an elephant look like? And they'll say, oh, it's like long and slender. And the person on the back is, oh no, it's actually chunky and wide. So if somebody has been to an intuitive homeopath and you ask them what's homeopathy, they will say, oh, it's when you meditate with somebody and you get a remedy made from a rainbow. Whereas if a different person goes, what's homeopathy? You'll say to them, I sat there and the person asked me lots of questions about my bowel motions and my this and that, and they gave me one single remedy and that was it. So I do feel it's at a stage where we need to define things a little bit and have maybe little micro sections of homeopathy, so that, I don't know if it gets called different names or if we But I do think it's time that we have some definitions like laid out so that we can say what type of homeopaths we are, and so that our clients doesn't then get disillusioned with what it is that they are signing up for.
No, it's a joy to hear you say that, Eugenie. I hope you mean it. Because
I do.
I say, yeah, oh, good, I hope so. Because it's like, if I say that, it's like I'm being very male and right-brained and all this bullshit. And, you're not talking about feelings, you're just talking about facts, not feelings, all this kind of rubbish. And I think you're right. We're not dealing with archaeology studies or ancient history. We're dealing with people and human beings. And we have a responsibility as human beings to be clear for them about what we're doing and what we're offering. And we need to be clear. If we talk about provings, and as you say, intuitive, I don't know how that sounds like that might be something in Australia. But what the heck? What are we talking about? An intuitive prescriber? This is insane. What do you think I do? Of course, part of the way I work and the way you work, of course it'll be intuitive. It doesn't make I have a section where I just don't use the repertory. I don't even use materia medica. In fact, I haven't even read anything about homeopathy because I'm so intuitive I can just pick up on it without knowing anything. This is insanity. Oh, intuitive prescriber. What does that mean? Oh God, you're going to get loads of emails.
No, keep going, because it's actually a part that worries me, because there are some courses out there these days that are about 4 months long, and people are calling themselves homeopaths after that. And all they have learned is detox therapy, homeopathic immunization, and just basically protocol prescribing. And then they call themselves homeopaths. And I am literally terrified of the ramifications of this. So it's something that I've gently broached the subject with some people who have done it, but it's something I'm terrified of, because there's going to be people out there calling themselves homeopaths. There are people right now calling themselves homeopaths who have done a 4-month course.
It's scary, and we have a responsibility to those patients that are getting this stuff. It's bad enough being a homeopath. It's difficult enough as it is. Even after 4 years training or whatever, it's difficult enough. It's like saying, I'm a concert pianist. How do you know? I just play the piano intuitively. I can play intuitively. No, we have to have a training. We have to learn how to play notes and what the C scale is, and you work at it for years before you can even begin to think you're a concert pianist or anything else. You might not do it. The same with homeopathy. It's like there's steps to be taken for you to acquire the knowledge enough to the point where you can say, of course I prescribe intuitively, but intuitive means forgotten information. Essentially, it's forgotten information, which I've learned somewhere. I know I have a feeling for lycopodium, a feeling for pulsatile, a feeling for the but that's based on my experience of study, of patients and so on. It doesn't just come out of the ether. And the same thing with meditative provings and stuff. You just read them. I know what a proving is. I don't read like a proving. It doesn't make sense. And not a homeopathic proving. It's an ego thing quite often. Oh, this aligns the female part of the patient with the male part. It's like, what are you talking about? Based on what? And we as homeopaths are responsible for allowing this to happen. And in our nicey world, do whatever you want under the name of homeopathy. No, it's not acceptable. Argue it. Of course, I would happy to argue and be respectful as well. But I want to talk to those people, say, what you're doing is, I think, only what I think, is dangerous, actually. Some of it is quite dangerous. And you can see how the skeptics and all those people home in on homeopathy, because some of what we say is just nuts. Nuts. And they're right. They're absolutely right. I read some of the skeptics, and I have to say some of it I agree with. So I wrote an article, they actually quoted me in the Society Journal. This guy, no, he wasn't in the Society Journal, but just saying, because I was talking about this stuff, and they were saying, oh, good, at last the homeopath is saying this stuff. Now, I'm not in any way in collusion with their thinking or what they're up to, but they've got a point. There are seeds there of what we do, which is utter madness. And we're too scared to say it's mad. No, it's not okay. Or discuss it with me and argue it with it on a collective basis. Let's really define ourselves, because if we haven't defined ourselves properly, we get defined by other people and people who don't like us and hate homeopathy. What a shame. I think we're in decline, and I think our thinking's in decline. Actually, the two things go together. I think we're in decline because our thinking's in decline. We're not clear about what we're doing. And you can feel it. It's like in the professional organised bodies. They're too scared to argue and fight for what is homeopathy, for what we stand for. Where do we stand on vaccination? Where do we stand on some of this stuff? They actually haven't got really, when it comes to it, the guts, if you like, if that's the right word, guts or something, to assert ourselves. Then, of course, we get walked all over by the pharmaceuticals, all the rest of it. It's easy peasy. It was like little baby lambs in the field waiting to, oh my God, you've got me going on.
It's great to hear this viewpoint. I tell you what, I would have wholeheartedly agreed with you 250 episodes ago. So where I am now is that because I've had so many homeopaths doing so many like mind-blowing things, which I would have completely scoffed at years ago. Now I talk to them and I hear the great results that they're getting and that their clients are getting, and wacky things that I've tried out in my clinic because of interviewing different homeopaths and then getting results in clinic. So I'm at the point at the moment where I think there's a place for everyone. Like, I think I hear what you're saying. There's all sorts of, actually, I interviewed Ambika Waters this morning, or Waters, and the color remedies and the sound remedies. And I've had, obviously, Harry van der Zee, who worked with Peter Chappell, who made the remedies where basically it's just an intention that's in a vial of alcohol that have cured all these people of malaria in Africa. So I'm at the place at the moment where I think there's a space for everyone. Doesn't matter how wild and wacky it is, but we need to define it. So we need to define what type of homeopathy we practice. I do believe there's a space for everybody. Apparently, we're in an age of Aquarius now. I'm not an astrologer. People I've had on the podcast that are talking about this new age that we're in. People are waking up after COVID. There's all sorts of interesting things happening in the world. So I do think there's a place for all of these new wacky things that homeopaths are doing, but I do think we should define it. So I do think it's worth, just so that if you are a client who is very intuitive or who likes wild and wacky remedies, then you go and seek a practitioner that practices that way. But if you're somebody that doesn't feel comfortable with that you go to a practitioner that practices a different way. So I just think, like Marcus Fernandez and I have talked on the podcast about this several times, it's about laying out your wares. So being crystal clear on your website or wherever your marketing material is about what a client can expect when they come to see you and the way that you practice and your beliefs, so that they know, okay, this is a person that believes this and this is the way that they practice. This is what I can expect. And then everybody's clear and we know where we're all at. But then at the same time, for the homeopathic community, for us to accept the way that others practice, because I have been guilty of poo-pooing people who use radionics machines or who use combination remedies or who all these other things that we do in homeopathy. And then I've ended up playing around with it in the end myself. So now I'm at that point where I'm just like trying to just accept what others do. Like I had a client the other day who went to somebody here in Perth who walked away with a remedy that had it was a combination remedy with 90 different ingredients in it, 90 different remedies in one. And it's not however what I would do. I would never do that. And not 90 different remedies, maybe 5 or 6 or whatever. But yeah, I think that needs to be defined. Like, what sort of homeopathy is that? What do you even call that? And if that's the way you practice, that if that person goes to you and you give them 90 remedies in one single one and you have an aggravation, that you as a client don't then write off all of homeopathy, that you know that is called mega polypharmacy, whatever we end up deciding to call that. That's that type of homeopath. It's not a classical homeopath that you went to. So I don't know. This is why we need to have a chat and just figure out, like, nut all of this out.
I'd argue with you and say, I don't think it's homeopathy. You call it what you like and you can say all these things can happen. Everybody can do, of course they can do what they like. But it's when you call it homeopathy and what homeopathy is. And the outline of what homeopathy is, as I said, is not difficult. It's not complicated. It's not rigid. It's essentially try and stick down to as few little medicine as possible. Not 90 remedies. How can...
It's crazy.
Do that if you want. But don't call yourself a homeopath, because that's not there in the teachings. It's like saying, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. But it's right across the board, this blurring of art and writing and what's acceptable, what does a writer do, for example. You have happenings and stuff. It's like, it's not really writing. It's not, whether it's art or not, it's another matter. But you see this blurring of everything across homeopathy, across politics, to the point where everything's so blurred. And the irony is, it ends up, it's a kind of tyranny. It's a bit like the PC stuff about words you can't use, words you can use, words you shouldn't, what you can say about gender, what you can say about the Palestinian situation. You can't say anything because it's becoming something you can't discuss it. It's beautiful. It's fascism under the guise of a sort of liberal, everything's okay, anybody can do what they like. No, they can't. I don't believe in murder. We have to have boundaries. We have to have definition. And if we lose definition, you're powerless. Essentially, you're powerless. And that's true of medicine as well. You're utterly powerless. If you can't criticize someone who's giving 90 remedies in one mix by criticizing, actually, may well, it's not homeopathy, it's not there. If we can't do that, we're up for everything. We're up for anything. You can have whatever you want. You can have Martians prescribing. You can call yourself a Martian and prescribe, and nobody will challenge you and say, Eugenie, you're not a Martian. You're not. I promise you. But we can't, we're getting to the point where you can't say that because it might offend you.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is a real cultural problem we've got, not just homeopathy, how we define that. To say you're looking for boundaries or definition is, oh my God, is he a fascist? No, just saying we need to know what we're talking about. It's 90 remedies, not homeopathic prescription. Actually, not really, or argue with me. We do need those, boundaries, really.
Yeah, actually, one of the people I messaged her because I saw on her website she was calling herself a homeopath, and she did this 4-month course. And I said to her, "Can't call yourself a homeopath after 4 months." And she was like, "Oh, but I was just going to call myself a new homeopath." I'm like, "No, you're not a new homeopath. You're not a homeopath. You are a practitioner who prescribes homeopathy. You're not a homeopath," because she's actually a registered nurse who then did like a 4-month course. And I'm like, "No, you're not a homeopath. You're a practitioner who prescribes homeopathy. It's very different." So, we need to lay down like an international guideline of what is a homeopath and what's not, so that we can clarify this. I'm loving this conversation, Mike, and I love it even more that we had no idea we were going to be talking about this. I was going to ask you a bunch of other questions, but this conversation is really important, and I'm so glad that we're having this because it's really important that we retain our critical thinking. And I agree. It's very strange times that we live in. And I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. So I am constantly in challenge about what I say in front of them, what I keep from them, what I expose them to because of this strange world that they're growing up in, which is very hard. My son had a boy in his class who's now a girl, something I never in my generation ever experienced. So it has to be done with compassion and love and understanding and all those things. But then also, I don't know. It's murky. It's tricky. It's very hard. But we're going through that with homeopathy as well. And I hear what you're saying that we as homeopaths we can be a funny bunch ourselves, right? And I often see homeopaths attacking each other in the way that they prescribe. So I do believe there's a way that we can all practice differently and still respect each other.
Yeah, hopefully. But it needs to be, it's like you say, people attacking each other and all that. I'm very happy to attack. Not attack is perhaps the wrong word. But to open up the debate, to debate it, to argue it, because I say I'm classical, they wouldn't have me teach at the classical college in London when there was a classical college because I wasn't classical enough, because they were very rigid about what they were doing. I was just opening it. But it still some sort of debate needs to happen around this stuff. Because as you say, we're getting to be so careful about what we say about anything. It's brilliant. It's utter social control. It's a control of a magnitude beyond. You had it with we all had it with the vaccine, not just you mentioned if you had it or not had it. It wasn't up for discussion. It's not whether you have it or not have it. It's what was really frightening about that. More frightening than the vaccine itself, if you like, is the fact that people aren't capable of talking about it.
You weren't allowed to question it. That is
that's the scary thing.
Yeah, that is the scary. If we go down that rabbit hole, if we're not allowed to question things, then I'm probably I'm very naive. Like literally somebody in school told me once that the word gullible was taken out of the dictionary. And I was so shocked. Like, why would anybody take a word out of the dictionary? And I'm that gullible, naive person. But so I love asking questions and I love just seeing people's different point of view. But sometimes I've been shocked that I wasn't allowed to ask a question. So when I first arrived in Perth, I posted in a group because I came from New Zealand where people are very open-minded and accepting, and it's a live and let live. And I came over here and I just asked in a Facebook group over here as where can unvaccinated, because they had the no jab, no play. So if you weren't vaccinated, your child couldn't go to daycare center. So I'm like, I want to start a play group just for unvaccinated children because we're not allowed anywhere else. And that Facebook post ended up being screenshotted and being on the Sunday Star Times and on Channel 7 News. So I had just arrived here in Perth and suddenly I'm like all over the newspaper just from asking a question of, okay, we're not allowed, my kids are not allowed in a daycare center. Let's start our own one. And it's just unbelievable that you're not even allowed to ask questions. Like, that's very scary when we go down that road.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're talking about here.
Oh, Mike, this is so great. We're having this conversation. Like I said, completely unplanned, completely not where we were going to go at all. And that hour just flew so quickly. But I just want to hear from you. Like, what other messages do you want to leave for our listeners? And maybe just tell them a little bit more about your school, when your enrollments are, any other messages of how people can get hold of you. And funny story for our listeners, my friend actually studies at a college where Mike teaches. And she was telling me how hilarious you are. So we ended up having such a serious conversation today, which is, that's okay, he'll have you in stitches. And we ended up having this serious conversation. Everything happens for a reason. And today was so important. So thank you for that. But let's finish up on a positive, happy note. So tell us a bit about your college. Tell us when your enrollments are and just a bit more about that.
Yeah, its enrollment starts October, but it's what we're talking about actually. Because, there's lots of fun to be had, but the fun comes out of a seriousness about how we take it and what we're doing. It's a serious business, and it can be great fun as well. Once you've got those boundaries in place and what your homeopathy is, the teaching becomes easy, actually, because you have a group of people. And, of course, the teachers at the college come from different approaches. You've got Dean to Brett, Tony Hurley, people like that, Linda, Shannon, and it's just lovely because you've all got this consensus, essentially, of what you're doing. And it doesn't need to be. It's not about my personality or my belief. Everybody has but it's within the context of what is homeopathy and our belief in homeopathy and empowering patients and empowering students. That's essentially what the college is about. And it is. It's good fun. It's friendly. It's no nonsense. It's without being rigid. It's critical. It's runs a clinic where students see. It's everything we're talking about, really, I would say. And we also, Dion and I do a postgraduate course called the Orion course, which is just, again, going through all this stuff. So a large part of that is me. What is classical homeopathy? What is any other kind of homeopathy? Again, in a way which is open for discussion. The big thing, open for discussion. And if it's like, that's where the fun happens, in the discussion, in the debate, in all this, that. But that doesn't seem to be happening in the profession. Everybody is in their little sect, in their little, I'm a classical, I'm a practical, I'm a this, I'm a meditative Buddhist. Very little happens between any of it. So the fun is actually in the interaction. And that's what the college is about. And I'd like to think what I'm about. Same with my patients. It's the interaction, working out what seems to be true for you, not what's true for me. I can handle what I know what's true for me, but what's true for you. So it's all very open-ended, actually.
Asking that
I sounded
question.
like a ranting away, dictatorship and rigid, but not at all. Not how I am at all.
Look, a good rant is really important. I'm actually speaking at the Homeo Summit, which I think is in May, but we're actually doing the recording next week. And by the time this episode comes out, it'll be June. And my topic that I'm speaking on is actually challenging the status quo in homeopathy, because there's lots of things. I know. And I tell you what, there's a few times where I have thought of pulling out. I've still got a week, but they've already got my name on there. So I don't think I can pull out now. But I'm actually terrified of delivering this speech because so many homeopaths have such fixed ideas. And so I am a little bit scared of I'm just going to throw out some topics there for people to consider. I want us just to consider different things and having that discussion. That's the important thing. Yeah. And if we end up not agreeing, that's totally fine. We need to hear each other out, listen to this discussion, see what's right for you, and then go from there and define what it is that we do. Yeah. You'll be receiving an email from me shortly with some other homeopaths, and we are going to have this discussion. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. It'll be good. But as I say, the source of the answers to a lot of this is in the organon. It's clear what homeopathy is really. There's some bits and pieces that have been added to it by Burnett, but actually it's all there. That's the answer. It's not what I think intuitively homeopathy is. The answer is in the literature. Anyway.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Michael, it's been really lovely to chat with you today.
And
Thank you so much for your time.
Not at all. Thank you, Eugenie, and speak again soon sometime.
Bye-bye.